Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell, and I am so proud to welcome Sendable as our sponsor. Sendable is the social media management platform that I personally prefer to handle all of our storytelling online. Sendable has generously offered you, an ardent Business of Story listener, an incredible 30% discount on their traction plan. It's normally $99 a month, but if you use my link, you can get it for just $69 a month. So visit sendable.com/park30 to start your free 30-day trial today.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture, I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands, people buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Ladies and gentlemen, Glass Joe.
When I was in college, I used to love Nintendo's first-person boxing video game called Punch-Out because the ring announcer just cracked me up.
Fight. Body blow, body blow, body blow, body blow, body blow, body blow, put him away.
And ever since then, whenever the universe turns the tables on me, or somebody comes and tells me of a misfortune that has befallen them completely out of nowhere, I can't help but think of Glass Joe and body blow, body blow, body blow.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Knockout. Great fighting. You're an up-and-coming boxer.
Champion boxer Mike Tyson said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And then, of course, life takes over and you got to get after it. Well, that's why I'm excited about today's guest, Nosa Eguae. He had a plan to be in the NFL and have a stellar football career, and he had all the talent to do it. But life delivered him a few body blows, punched him in the face, and he had to wake up to a new and more powerful personal story in order to get through. And now Nosa is on a personal mission to do something, as he says, to eradicate the disease of low expectation in athletes and young people. Essentially, what he learned from his transition and the very surprising time when the world pulled the rug out from underneath him on several occasions, to the person it has made him today and the story that he has to share. I learned about Nosa from my good friend Bob DeMeo, a client of mine I've done some storytelling work for out in Chicago for his financial firm, DeMeo Schneider. He's also been a featured guest on the show, so you can check him out. But he heard Nosa at a gathering in Chicago and immediately reached out to me and said, you got to get this guy on your show. Now, I'm going to let him tell his whole story, but here are the crib notes. So he goes as one of the top athletes into NCAA football. I think he had like 40 scholarship offers out of high school, and a smart guy too. So he was like all in academically and talent-wise. Goes to Auburn. I believe he's the only Auburn player to play on 2 national championship teams, winning one and losing one. And again, on today's show, Nosa's going to share with you what he learned from both the win and, more importantly, from the loss. Well, then the NFL comes calling. He gets drafted, doesn't make it through his first season, gets cut on national TV. And then Hollywood comes calling, thinking they can make him a star in the reality TV world, and he's all set for that. Doesn't quite work out. Body blow, body blow. The NFL comes back. We want you again to play out here. Doesn't work out. Body blow, body blow. And that's when Nosa woke up to his true calling in life. So let's get after it with Nosa Eguae right now, who is the epitome of it's not about how hard you hit the canvas, but how you get up. Nosa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's really great. Our good friend Bob DeMeo introduced us, and he was on the show a few months ago. Brilliant financial mind there in Chicago I've had a chance to work with, and I'm so glad that he connected us because you have a fascinating story.
Yeah, Park, I really appreciate you having me and the opportunity to do life with Bob. And I just see him as, just such a great example for me in my world and the way that in which he conducts his business. And, the opportunity when he told me that he was on just listening was incredible. You guys just had a magnificent synergy within the show. And, now as we sit here a few months later, getting the opportunity to be on the show as well as I'm definitely fortunate, and there's a lot of gratitude. So I appreciate you having me.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Now, it was funny because when you and I first chatted on our call just to get acquainted a couple months ago, you had then talked about your, life, and we're going to go into that as a defensive end with Auburn Tigers. And it didn't occur to me at the moment, but later on that day, I'm like, I remember that dude. And the reason being is my Washington State University Cougars, I believe, kicked off your season in 2013 that led to the 2014 National Championship. And we actually played you guys pretty tough, I remember.
It was a close game. I tell you what, that Mike Leach air raid offense is tough to stop, especially when you're playing in the SEC and you're seeing a bunch of smash mouth football. But yeah, I was definitely a player and a starter in that game.
Well, and it was big for us too, because it was one of the first games we'd seen Mike Leach's team in action, and how well we actually showed up that day. But I do remember you being called out several times, and this is one of the superstars here on the team, and we'll talk again a little bit about that in a moment. But we just lost Mike Leach to Mississippi State, and although this is not a football podcast, I'm a big college football fan.
Yes, sir.
And you had mentioned that he recruited you or tried to recruit you over to Texas Tech before he was at Wazoo.
Yeah. So before I committed to Auburn, I was down to Texas Tech, UCLA, and Auburn University. I had just decommitted, from the University of Colorado. It was 2009. Texas Tech was coming off probably their most winning season to date. Michael Crabtree and those guys, and they were Big 12 champions. And when I took the visit, it was funny. I've heard all these stories about Coach Leach. My brother actually played at Texas Tech, but I get into the office. I'm thinking we're going to have this serious meeting with the head coach. And he asked me if I wanted to see a magic trick. He goes on for the next 15 minutes, not talking football, but we had a awesome display of magic tricks. He showed me 3 tricks, never seen them before, hadn't seen them again. And it was interesting.
What were they? Do you remember the tricks?
They were card tricks. I mean, he was pulling cards out of his hat, out of his back pocket. It was extremely impressive. I would say I've never seen anything like it. But he was saying that, it was something that he picked up over the past few years. And, he showed me a few magic tricks. It was, it's one of the funny stories I have about Coach Leach.
Well, I could say he pulled a few wins out of his hat at WSU too, so he could perform some magic on the football field, at least offensively. This year, defensively, not so much. But he's gone to Mississippi State, and I don't know how the air raid's going to hold up in the SEC.
It's going to be fun to watch. I'll tell you that. I think, with him at Mississippi State, with Coach Kiffin at Ole Miss, they're going to bring their offenses. It's going to be tough to stop. But I'll tell you what, it's one of the loudest places you could ever play a football game at. Starksville, they for some reason allow them to carry cowbells into the stadium, and it's loud.
And it's madness, huh?
Oh, for sure.
Well, it'll be interesting because my argument with the air raid is it's really prolific between the 20s, but if you don't have a decent running game to balance it, which we seldom did at WSU, you have a hard time in the red zone. You become very, very one-dimensional. So I'll be curious with the smash mouth football the SEC plays, how that'll fare.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be fun to watch. They're going to have some athletes out there too. So it'll be fun to watch.
That's true. So tell us a little bit about your backstory and how did you find yourself as an Auburn Tiger and then ultimately in the NFL for a little while?
Yeah, Park, I think it starts with and ends with gratitude. position I'm in today, to have success in the corporate sector. But it really started from humble and meager beginnings. My parents came to the States in the late '70s. My dad was a master's student and ended up getting his master's and his PhD in microbiology. He came here to learn. And my mom came a year after, and as they were going through getting their education, my dad was actually putting himself through school. So, awesome story that I share in my TEDx was, the fact that my dad came to this country with $136 to his name. It was all that he had. He was able to get his student visa. He had to pay for his school fees, and that was what he had left. And 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to give my siblings a special Christmas gift, and I sat down and did a one-on-one, or I guess a two-on-one interview, 60-minute style with my parents. And my dad, talked about that journey. First job here when he was going and putting himself through school was working at a chicken processing plant. And it was in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And he was going to school, of course, getting his master's and working at the chicken processing plant at night. And, those are the memories that, I look back and say, man, I've learned some amazing things from my parents. First of all, it's sacrifice, being willing to commit to something and being willing to work hard for it and attain the goals that you've put in place. And that's my life. I was fortunate enough to find the game of football at a young age, and it was what my brothers did, so it was what I did. And it was fun. It was all I ever wanted to do. My dad and my mother were very clear that it wasn't the most important thing. That, I remember 7, 8 years old in Texas, we always wanted to, every August I was looking to sign up for a league, and my dad said no, that I had to focus on school. And it wasn't until the 4th grade when he actually said yes. And it was, it was okay, you can play, but if anything happens with the grades, you're not going to be playing anymore. Man, it was always this dynamic that, I'm so thankful for today was, okay, it's education first and football comes second. And as much as I wanted that to be true, man, I love playing football. And in Texas, it's football country. And for me to really, have parents that love the game as well, but they always made sure that I understand prioritization and that sport was important, but education came first.
And didn't you have, coming out of high school, like 40 scholarship offers to play football at various institutions around the country?
Yes, sir. I was extremely fortunate to have a few offers, and
a few.
And I was a pretty big kid that had the grades, and also was a pretty good football player. So the offers came in. My first offer was from the University of Utah. I remember taking that back to my mom and dad, and essentially I said, "Hey, Ma, you're not gonna have to pay for my school." I just got offered a full scholarship to play football at the University of Utah, and it was just those are the moments you remember. And then the offers then began to pile up, and then I realized I had to make a decision at 17 years old. And I thought that Colorado was it. I never saw mountains before, and I fell in love with the campus. But I had to make a football decision, and that's what led me to Auburn University, War Eagle.
And what was it about Auburn, out of all of those other places and visits that you took, that you fell in love with?
Yeah, I grew up a Florida Gator fan. I remember watching the Florida Gators, Steve Spurrier, back in the late '90s, and when they played and they lost, I used to cry. I was a huge Florida Gator fan. More than that, I really just appreciated the SEC. When I was a kid, I played in a league that had a weight limit, so I thought I was going to be a running back like my brother, but I soon realized I was going to be playing defensive line. And
you were getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, for sure. And the defense in the SEC was just always top tier. And when Auburn came in the picture, I took a visit, and something was different. From the stadium, just sheer numbers, 90,000 people packing it out, and it was a similar experience that I had in playing Texas high school football. It was the only show in town. There wasn't a professional team in sight, and it was about Auburn football. And, there was another team in the state, but I won't mention their name, but it was about Auburn. and it was important to them. And, I knew I wanted to be a part of, shifting the culture. They were coming off a losing season, and, I'm thankful enough to be a part of that change.
And then that year that we talked about where you kicked it off with the WSU Cougars in 2013, you guys went on to the Rose Bowl, the national championship, which would have been in January of 2014. I have those dates right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You have them exactly right. And, it's awesome. I love to share my story now because, I tell everybody, sports is synonymous with life. I think that's why it's the connective tissue of society, right? Because I wish I could say it was all roses, but it wasn't. My career started off in 2009. The day before our first game, I was, a freshman, going to be starting in our nickel package, playing special teams, living the dream. And I got an MRI the Friday before our game. My foot was hurting. I was starting to limp a little bit and I realized that I had a stress fracture. I was out the whole season. The next year, of course, we had a quarterback by the name of Cam Newton. And I started on that team as a redshirt freshman, and we won it all, and it was an amazing experience at 18 years of age to win a national championship, to really be at the top of college football. And then 2 years later, we went 3-9. We lost teammates, unfortunately, due to gun violence, and it was earth shattering. And that next year, which is what you spoke on, Park, we had the biggest turnaround in college football history, and that's what life's. It's not about the triumph, because the triumph is nothing without talking about the setbacks and the unfortunate circumstances. But we responded. It's the same thing that I then did in my personal life, was respond to failure and setback, and it's those moments that I love to glean from as I stepped into my journey post sport.
And before we step into that, can you take us to what it feels like to step out into the Rose Bowl and all of those screaming fans under 72-degree sunny skies in LA playing for a national championship? Yeah. I'll never forget it. There's no better place to play football in all of the world. I truly believe that the Rose Bowl is a special, special place. In January, like you said, 72 degrees. Interesting about that game was they did pyrotechnics before the game. So it was really, really interesting because in the first quarter, you couldn't see the stands. So we, of course, come onto the field because of the smoke of the pyrotechnics during the national anthem. We couldn't see the stands. So I'll never forget, but it was the start of the second quarter. We're up on Florida State, and the smoke starts to dissipate. And you just see I'll never forget just looking up into the stands and saying, wow, 15 minutes into a ball game saying, oh, wow, like this is the Rose Bowl. It's the granddaddy of them all. And for my last game at Auburn, to end in that manner was incredible. We didn't win the game, unfortunately. Jameis Winston had a heroic comeback in the second half, and I made some mistakes that led to that. But it was fun. It was a great experience, and it's definitely one of my most memorable experiences at Auburn. Well, did it blow you away that the universe kind of brought life full circle for you, seeing how you were a big Florida State fan early on?
Yeah, I was
playing them for the championship.
Yeah. So I was a Florida fan.
Florida. I'm sorry.
But my brother,
Florida.
I was a Florida
right.
fan because my brother was a Florida State fan. He was a big Deion Sanders fan. So it was full circle. It really was. It was full circle, and to get a chance to play against Florida State, a team that I just remember hating growing up, and having that same feeling at 22 years old as I was getting ready to end my career. It was fun. Yeah, for sure. Full circle.
In that first championship that you guys won with Cam Newton, I think that was 2010.
Yes, sir.
Did you see the field? Were you playing?
I did. I started that season, so it was
You did.
was a redshirt freshman. I ended up starting the third game in the season and started throughout. The only player in Auburn history to start in 2 national championships. It was amazing. As a young kid, I was just trying not to mess up, right? Like I'm playing with the likes of Nick Fairley and Cam Newton and those guys, and I just remember us having so many seniors. We had 23 seniors on that team, and it was just this sacrificial. I am willing to do anything to ensure that you guys end up and leave here on a high note. And I remember Cam Newton stepping in. It was before he became Cam Newton, stepping in to our players only meeting before our first game, and we are getting ready to play Arkansas State, and he just said, "Follow me, follow me. I'm going to lead this thing, and I'm going to make sure I do everything I can to make sure that we win every single football game." And we ended up winning every single football game. So, the legend just continues. But yeah, it was an amazing year. We had some awesome moments. We went to Tuscaloosa. Man, I got some awesome stories about playing a football game at Alabama when they're up 28-0 and they end up losing. It's a life changing and liberating experience, to say the least.
So despite lifting a trophy and what's got to be gut-wrenching disappointment, what is the difference between the feeling of winning a national championship and losing one?
Wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked before. I would say that you put so much into it. Right. Like, if there's any coaches that are listening to this podcast, they're going to be able to attest. But our days, I'm talking about, Park, from the time we eat to the plays that we learn every single day, they're planned for us 6-7 months before. The sheer time that's put into preparing to win football games in the fall is next level and goes into it. So when you win and you know that you're the champion of the world when it comes to college football, there's no better feeling. And to do all of that, what I've just spoke to, and to lose last second with 10 seconds left in a season where everybody counted you out, you weren't supposed to be there. Tears. Yeah, real tears from big 6'4", 300-pound men, and it hurt. But more than that, I think that because it was my last game, it was this feeling of, I really want to live in the moment and appreciate my teammates. There's guys that, quite frankly, I never saw again that next day. We got back to Auburn, and I haven't seen them since. I went to go train, and I did my own thing, and a lot of guys did their own as well. So I actually wrote Auburn, to Auburn, an open letter, because I really just wanted to get my gratitude out before it was too late. But I just remember it was just cataclysmic. It was tough. It was gut-wrenching, to say the least. To win one was great as well, though.
What do you think from the win or the loss, which situation do you think you learn more from as a man and in the business world?
Yeah. I mean, championships and trophies are great, and being able to have an earnings call and report earnings. I mean, all those things are great, but that's not life. Life is in the moments when you fight valiantly and you come up short. And as much as I want to say that I, glean the most from wins, we all know that we glean the most from losses. And in 2014, I didn't know that that it could hurt that bad, but it did. But what do we do the next day? We got back up. We dusted our off the wounds, and we kept going. I mean, I think that that's something that I've learned, that I try to now, impart in, guys that I'm, getting the opportunity to help transition from sport. Because that's what it's about. It's sport, and it teaches you how to fight, and it teaches you how to get up when you lose, and it teaches you how to win in the right way, and making sure that you understand that it's always bigger than you. And if you lose, it's going to be bigger than you, and if you win, it's always still going to be bigger than you. So, I would say I learned quite a bit more in 2014 than I did in 2010.
And then you went on to the NFL with great aspirations for an NFL career. And what happened next?
Yeah. So I ended up, training in Miami, and just getting the opportunity to see and experience my dream come true. Since I was 8 years old, I wanted to play in the NFL. My favorite player growing up was Reggie White, and I was living the life that I always dreamed of. Man, I thought I was going to live it for at least the next 10 years, and I was, just thinking about what was next, the opportunity to retire my mother, the opportunity to just pay them back and pay it forward for all the things that they did for me and my siblings. And it was a high of highs followed by the low of lows, because when I was cut on Hard Knocks, it was the Hard Knocks season in 2014 for the Atlanta Falcons. I was one of the last guys cut.
And Hard Knocks is that HBO show that they're following NFL players around?
Yes, sir. It's the HBO reality show. And it was quite the experience, and getting the opportunity to play with the likes of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and seeing the way in which they go to work every day. I think that we all see Sundays, but these guys bring their briefcases in on Monday, and they bring their lunch pill on Tuesday, and it's a clock in and clock out business, and there's a lot on the line. Millions and billions of dollars on the line to do one thing, and it's to win championships. And there's 32 organizations that go after it, and only one gets it done every year. So there's a lot of losers, and it's fun to be a part of it. But the reality is the fact that guys get cut every day, and I'll never forget seeing the first guy that got cut and saying, okay, wow, okay, yeah, this is real. And soon thereafter, I experienced it. It's one thing to get cut, and it's another thing to come to the realization that football, the thing that you've centered your identity in, is over.
And when they cut you, how long had you been with the Falcons before you got cut?
So I was with the Falcons for about 4 months. Before I got cut. So I got with the Falcons in May, and ended up getting cut in September. It was. And
are you telling me that you getting the axe was actually captured on HBO show Hard Knocks and shown to the world?
Yeah, it was.
Wow. so adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
Even that much.
A little bit of salt to the wound, right?
Yeah. How'd that make you feel?
As I unpack it, as I really think about those days, I was so caught up in doing whatever I could do to make the team. I didn't see the cameras. You were just trying to survive. Training camp to this day was probably one of the hardest things I ever went through. It's a grind every single day, and there's guys that are fighting tooth and nail for 10 to 15 spots on a team, and it makes for great television, I might say. But more than that, there's lives at stake. So I watch Hard Knocks to this day from a different vantage point, and I know what it feels like to have cameras in your face after you hear that you no longer are part of an organization, and say, how does it feel? And it was a moment when, I remember my last words on the TV show was, thank you. It was gratitude to the GM and the head coach, Coach Mike Smith, and Thomas Dimitroff. And then it was the statement that I still live by today, and I said, I know God's got a plan. And I just set my gratitude, and I walked off into the sunset. But it was definitely one of those moments that, as I look back, it's everything that I stand on today. As tough as it was, as hard as it was, it's the residue of it is the passion that I live with today, and the reason why I do the work that I do.
Well, and you, after leaving there, thinking maybe your career was over in the NFL, you made that switch. You turned the page, as they say, and you started pursuing a business side of your life. And then I think, didn't the Oakland Raiders come calling?
Yeah, they did. They did. I wish I could say that it was, 2-3 days, and I picked up my bags, grabbed my briefcase, put on a suit, and became this business guy. But it was 8 months. It was 8 months of tough days, because for the first 2 to 3 months, I actually had a conversation with a former football player as well. We were talking about it, and the first 2-3 months after you get cut, you think a call's going to come the next day, and when it doesn't come that day, you let everybody know that's going to come tomorrow, and when it doesn't come tomorrow, you say it's going to come next week, and then you start to come to the unsettling realization that the call may not come. And for me, the opportunity to start to look at myself in the mirror as something other than a football player was extremely difficult, because although I did see myself as more than just a football player, I was involved in community works at Auburn my 5 years there. I was always attentive in the classroom because I know I wanted to do other things than just play football. Football really was who I was. It was the identity in which I lived in. So when it was no longer there, it took time to start to reinvent. It took time to really get myself off the ground and say, hey, I'm more than just an athlete. And I have so much compassion and empathy for the guys that are going through that transition, because it is extremely difficult work. And it takes, honestly, it takes experts to help you through it. And I was fortunate enough to just go through that experience, as earth shattering as it was, and get myself up. Spent so much time just understanding how to repurpose myself, how to speak to my strengths. But the biggest thing, the reason why I'm here today talking to you on the phone was because I learned how to tell my story. And I learned how to tell my story in a way that people understood that I was more than an athlete, and then wanted to champion who I was going to become before I became, which was, getting the chance to talk about story. I wouldn't be here without it.
In order to tell that story, you had to reframe your own story and how you saw yourself. The first narrative of being a national professional football player just didn't pan out. That story ended for you. And so it sounds like it took you, understandably, it took a while for you to reframe who you were and how you were going to contribute and what you were going to get out of life that way.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's a process, and I tried my hat at a couple things. I tried my hat at acting for a little bit, which was fun. And that came about because I was on that show Hard Knocks. And
what kind of acting were you doing? Like TV acting?
So it was TV. My agency was a subsidiary of CAA, which is a huge agency.
Yeah. What a creative artists.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So CA is, of course, sports, but they're also entertainment. With my short stint on Hard Knocks, the entertainment side actually reached out to me. They were looking for a role in the concussion movie with Will Smith.
Oh, okay.
So what about a fairy tale ending, right? Like I'm this athlete, I get cut, I then get this amazing opportunity to act, and I turn into Denzel Washington. That was my thought process.
Man's got a dream.
That was my thought process. I said, wow, like how seamless can this be? And then 2 months in, I get another no. I remember telling my story to a friend. I said, it was like I got hit for the first time when I got cut by the Falcons. I got hit with a hard left jab, and then 2 months later, I got hit with the right, and it knocked me to the ground. It wasn't what my plan, but I shifted my focus into becoming this actor. And then when I was down to the final few guys up for the role, I didn't get it, and it was devastating. They flew me out to be on at the studio. The movie was going to start in Pittsburgh in the next week, and I thought I was a shoo-in. I was exactly what they were looking for, but I didn't deliver in the script read, and I didn't get it, and it was once again pretty devastating.
Wow. Yeah, and this is all happening to you within a period of a few months. So you had a year in there after coming off the near glory of a national championship, losing it but learning from it, to then the excitement, exhilaration of being, drafted into the NFL with the Falcons. Just to have that not work out for you, and now Hollywood comes calling, as you say, you're going to be the next Denzel. I love that, and then that doesn't work out. So what I want to do, and by the way, this is the universe delivering you your own hard, knocks, but you have created such an amazing life and helped so many people now. And this whole idea about eradicating the disease of low expectations, I want to talk about that in just a moment after we get a chance for our listeners to hear from our good pals over at Sendable. So right after this message, let's come back and hear the second part of Nosa's amazing journey. Many of you have been following me in the Business of Story on social media for a while now, and I really appreciate it. And if you're not, I hope you will. We share valuable business storytelling tips to help your brand stand out among the awful noise out there. And we do it all thanks to Sendable, a social media management platform that helps over 3,000 digital agencies worldwide to work with their clients, breathe life into their brands, and get their stories heard on social media. What we like about Sendable is they make it super easy to manage your content and your stories online. They allow you to source content from clients and collaborate closely with them to create a social media strategy built on true and proven storytelling principles. You can reliably plan and schedule content to be automatically published to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and more. And you can demonstrate the impact that this content has had on your audience growth and conversion by reaching out through their in-depth reporting and analytics. There's much, much, much more that you can do. But you know what? I think maybe my favorite feature has to be Smart Posts functionality. Now, what Smart Posts are is it makes it incredibly easy to craft social media content and in one single step, customize it for each platform, giving you the best chance of driving engagement and getting people to pay attention to your content. Sendable truly makes managing so many channels an absolute breeze. I know, you have a lot of choices when it comes to social media management apps, so I wanted to let you know we here at the Business of Story can't recommend Sendable enough. Gavin and his team are so great that they have a special offer just for you. You can now get, as a special offer for Business of Story listeners, Sendable's Traction Plan for only $69 a month. That's a 30% savings. So sign up now at sendable.com/Park30. Believe me, your stories will take off. I'm Park Howell. Welcome back to the show, The Business of Story, and our tremendous guest today, Nosa Eguae. Nosa, so great to have you here. Now we want to move on to chapter 2 in your story, because I know in seeing your great TEDx talk, you talked about you were in this transition, and after several months, the Oakland Raiders came courting you, but you told your agent, thanks, but no thanks. You had pretty much closed your door on your NFL career, and you were moving on. Can you take us to that moment and what you've been doing since?
Yeah, Park, for sure. And it was May of 2014 and May of 2015. I apologize. And we had the opportunity to make the transition, and I got an opportunity to meet my now mentor, really by just telling my story. He's a Auburn guy, and he gave me the opportunity to meet with him in December of 2014. We sat down, we met, and I let him know the things that I was working on. He was really interested in hearing about, what was next for me. And it was the first time that I really even spoke to the fact that, I was done with sport. and I was done with that chapter, and I was now transitioning into what was going to be next. He was an executive at Baxter Healthcare, which is the company that I now get the opportunity to work for here in Chicago. And he let me know a little bit about Baxter, what they do, and had an internship in medical device sales. Of course, my entire family's in medicine, and I thought it was just seamless. I really did, and I just knew it was fate. And I then interviewed, just did the interview with HR, and got the opportunity to then identify a role that really aligned with my skill set to get into their leadership development inside sales position, and I interviewed for it. I remember having a shadowing experience and potential, and they were looking for 3 years of experience. But I told my story, and I remember getting the opportunity to interview, and a lady that I now have in my life as a mentor, Susan Cook, was with 30 years of experience in care, and she stood on the other side of me, and she said, you don't have the experience that we're looking for. And then I began to really just look into my story and why I was the fit. I mean, I told her boldly, I may not have the set experience, but I know that given the opportunity, the same way that I've done in my entire life, I will be a self-starter. I will make the team better from day one, and I will have high performance. I'm committed to it. I'm committed to learning. I'm committed to being a sponge, and I'm committed to make sure that I'm the best teammate on your team. It was a fateful day in April of 2015, and then I got the job at late April, and then in May I got the call from the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, so here you've got this new door open, and then that old romance of playing football is tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, Nosa, come on back." That must have been a hard decision not to, I would imagine.
Yeah, which is crazy. I speak to it a little bit in my TEDx, but it was a call that came right after I got out of the office, and my agent called me extremely excited. He said, "Nosa, pack your bags. We're going to Oakland." My first thought was, man, they could have called me 8 months ago. Yeah. but more than that, I just told him that I was going to give him a call back. I sat in my car for 30 minutes. I called a mentor, and I prayed, and I called him back at 23 years old, not knowing what was ahead. And I told him this. I said, "Jason, thanks, but no thanks." Reiterate that to the Oak. I'd appreciate it. I'm going to transition away from sport, and I'm going to have immense success in the corporate realm. I'm going to ensure that first by my example, and then by the work that I do, I help other athletes transition a lot more seamless than I did. And that was the end of the conversation. And from that point, I tell everybody, you tell the NFL no once, you can pretty much say you're saying no forever. There was no turning back. But I knew in 30 minutes that what I had went through wasn't just for me, that it wasn't just for me to go through this 8-month journey to then just go back to playing football because it was all that I knew. It was my passion. It was my purpose, but I found new purpose. I found new purpose in ensuring that I brought immense value to a company, and they saw that, and that I was then going to be able to climb the ladder and bring other guys up with me. That's really how all this started. And eradicating the disease of low expectation was first this journey of self-actualization. It was really just me looking at my journey and my story and saying, man, Nosa, you really thought the only thing you can do is play football? And as I started to engage with the amazing city of Chicago, I realized that it was bigger than just me and my issue of transitioning from sport. It was on the south and west sides of that city, and the philanthropic works that I would do in communities, and getting the opportunity to talk to kids, and kids that went through horrific experiences, experiences that, quite frankly, I had never been through and I never wanted to ever go through. But they would look at me and they would say that they weren't enough. And I would look at them and say, no, you are. Everything that you went through, you didn't go through that to not become. Everything that you went through is because you are called such amazing work in this world, in your community, in your neighborhood. You cannot let circumstances define you. And yeah, I spoke to, my time at Auburn, going 3-9, and then going, and getting the opportunity to play in the Rose Bowl. I talked about my experience of getting cut on national TV, and then having to reinvent who I am as an individual. And then I got the opportunity to start to speak to athletes. Got the opportunity to help my former teammates at Auburn transition. A teammate of mine, ended up working for Baxter. 8 months in, he gets a promotion. He calls me and says, "Thanks, Nosa, I'm the first person in my family to make over 6 figures." And it was at that moment that I realized that this needs to happen on a large scale level. That I can't just sit here and help a couple guys every couple of years as I make my way to the C-suite. That I needed to put my time, my effort, my energy, and throw my whole self at helping athletes transition from sport. That there was actually a vested interest in doing so. That helping athletes transition can be profitable. That can be sustainable. That there's so much value in the former athlete, and there's so much value in the former athlete being developed, and their leadership skills being cultivated for them to be the next wave of leaders in the corporate realm. So that has led me to my work now of speaking to kids, of getting the opportunity to speak in the business sector across industries about eradicating disease of low expectation. We could all find it within ourselves, and we could all get rid of it, and we could all be better, and we could all serve people, and we could all be the individuals that we're called here to be. And I truly believe that each of us are holding within us a incredible gifting that nobody else in this world has. And that gifting is supposed to be used for the benefit and for the betterment of other people.
Well, and you've got these 3 steps for people to consider if they feel like they are suffering from this disease of low expectations. And, we all do at one point or other. There's no doubt about it. Low expectations in ourselves and what the world holds, for us. So can you quickly hit what those 3 are and why they're important?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. So the first is find your mirror. As I got the opportunity to share my story on the TEDx stage, I remember just going back to 2014 and in those tough days post-sport when I was, hit by that left jab and I was then hit by the right cross. I didn't believe it in myself. But more than that, I had people in my world, that my sister specifically, that spoke life into me, that in the midst of my toughest days, she would not let me not fully understand everything that I was called to do in this world, that I was dynamic, that I was going to change the world. It was those words that I leaned into, and I challenged the individuals in my TEDx to find your mirror. Is incredibly important when you look to self-actualize, and then you look to then self-correct. We all will suffer from low expectations in some way throughout our lifetime, but what do we then do to respond? So finding your mirror was incredibly important.
And that's a person that can reflect back to you the power you have and what you're really bringing when you're feeling down and out and maybe even a little bit sorry for yourself. Here's a person that is going to build you up, and they're just reflecting who you really are.
Yeah, definitely. And, I speak about my sister quite a bit, but, she was amazing, ever since I was a kid. I remember her just going back and letting me know that, hey, so I understand, that you're playing this game of football, but You have so much to give the world. And it was in those days when, I was going through such a tough time, and I was going through and really just trying to understand who I was, and that I would just glean and cling to those words. Man, I owe so much to my sister, and I feel like we all can find those people that are always going to see us in the fullness that God sees us, that the universe sees us, and I definitely send an ode to my sister.
And then your second strategy, I thought, was a really interesting way of how you articulate this particular strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So it was find your butt. My biggest thing was, as I started to look at my story and its totality, it was failure. I was at a time when there was failure after failure. But what happens after, right? I think, Park, you can speak to it just like I can. And when we start talking about the power of story, that's what brings us together. The triumphs are great. Everybody has them, yeah. But when we start to be vulnerable and we start to really unpack our story for people, it's a company that's talking about a time in which they weren't executing the way that they are now executing at. But being vulnerable, letting people understand that, I am here right now. I am leveraging, my platform to impact, but I've not always been here. And my story, just as much as it is right now, it is in those times that I went through the difficult circumstances that I did. And I think that finding your butt is, okay, you went through this unfortunate situation. Man, you're in an unfortunate situation, but
Right.
What's next? And that was what I really wanted to leave with the individuals during the TEDx. And then my last one, which I think I saved the best for last, was champion your issue. And I remember saying, find the work that's bigger than you, that tugs at your heart, and unabashedly champion it. And I talked about the story, of course, with the Oakland Raiders and what I said to my agent. And I talked about the work that I'm doing out. Just starting a nonprofit with a group of former athletes to help athletes transition from sport boldly. That's the work. Because if it wasn't for HBO choosing the Atlanta Falcons, if it wasn't for me not making that team, if it wasn't for me then, getting told, no, I'm not going to be the next Denzel Washington. And if it wasn't for me going through the hurdles that I've had to go through since making the transition to the corporate sector, I wouldn't have the work that I get to champion now. And I think that really when I unpack the work, when I unpack what it means to champion an issue that's bigger than me, that's what life's about. That's the fulfillment. It's bringing wholeness to people, because I guarantee that if you bring wholeness to someone else, it'll find you.
Well, and what I hear in your voice, Nosa, is just this passion and this energy. And what I can imagine is your body's in a lot better shape than Ed. You've spent the last 4 or 5 years in the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. My knee tendonitis, it doesn't hurt as much when I do yoga, which is pretty much all I do as far as my working out goes nowadays.
Well, and even your head, for that matter, you're not getting it concussed out there on a regular, day basis. So
yeah, definitely. It's
no. So this has been absolutely incredible. In parting, one last thought, word of encouragement or guidance that you would share with our listeners about how they can really embrace their story and see the light in it, see the opportunity in it to find something that they can really champion in their life?
Yeah. I would love to do that. Think that for all of your listeners, I just first want to make sure that each of them fully understand that they have a unique gifting that is put in them, and that's really not in anybody else. A unique experience, and the world needs that gift. The world needs those experiences, and there's issues across the world. There's not an issue that's bigger than another one. Find yours and champion it. And that's what this life's all about. If you want to find fulfillment, find it by helping somebody else. And I found mine. I'm going to get the opportunity to launch our nonprofit in Q1 of this year with an amazing team. It's called Prolific. And as we begin to start to tell the story, our biggest ask is that you listen. And I think that, what you'll be able to see by what the work that we do is it's just shining a light on the gladiators. And I think that people need to understand what happens to the gladiator when they're no longer in the arena. So yeah, just find that issue and champion it. The world needs all of us.
And Nosa, was that your website, Prolific, did you say?
Yeah, Prolific. So it's under construction right now. But
Prolific.com?
www.prolificcompany.com.
Company spelled out, prolificcompany.com. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
And then when it's up and running, by the time our listeners are hearing your show here, hopefully it'll be up and running, or if not, they can circle back to it. But Nosa, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your story, the highs and lows of it. Really, really fascinating. We appreciate it.
Park, thank you so much for the platform. What you're shining a light on is what I like to tell is I tell people all the time that, story is what brings us all together, because we all have one. And what you're doing to shine a light on it from a business perspective is incredible. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you, Bob, if you're listening out there, for making this happen and introducing Nosa and I. I'd like to thank all listeners. Thank you for joining us again for this edition of the Business of Story. If you like what you heard from Nosa and you've got people in your family, friends, colleagues who could benefit by his wisdom and from his story, by all means, feel free to share this episode with them. That would be awesome. And if I can be of service to you, visit me over at businessofstory.com, and I can help you craft and tell a compelling story, a true, real-life, authentic story, who you are, where your brand is in the world, and how you can have the kind of impact that Nosa is making out there, just simply by dialing in your purpose-driven brand story. And once you've got it there, by all means, hit my friends up over at Sendable. They will help you publish that story online, help you track it. They've got a brand new holiday calendar out that you can then schedule your messaging around the different holidays throughout the year. It makes your life even that much easier. That's what I love about Sendable. And you can get 30% off right now their traction plan by going to sendable.com/Park30. That's PARK30. So thanks again for listening, and be sure you're back here next week when we will have another amazing story artist with us like Nosa. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.